Hey, welcome. I'm glad you're here. This is my house, my ranch up in the mountains, and last Tuesday I did a talk, and I probably had 25 teenagers here to talk about America and how we got here and what the point of America is, and from our pilgrims to today. And the very next day, Charlie Kirk was shot and killed and assassinated. And since then, another group of teenagers have asked to come up, and it started with, I think, 20, and there are going to be about 70 people here tonight. It's kind of grown quickly, and I think that just goes to Erica's statement, "You have no idea what you've unleashed." And it's all good. It's all good. I don't know if you've noticed on social media everywhere, people are talking about God, going to church for the first time, turning to Christ. My sister and I, who don't agree politically, we had a long conversation today about it all has to come back to Christ. It all has to come back to Christ. And this is going to change things, just as it did in the 1960s. Unfortunately, it took 3, or if you count Kennedy, 4 assassinations in the 1960s to change people. But what happened after that? We had the Christ movement. We had that Jesus revolution happen. And I think the same thing is happening, because Martin Luther King was right. If you put evil right side by side to good, people will always choose the good. And so I wanted to share with you some of the things I'm going to share tonight, and we're just filming this on our iPhones because we didn't plan on doing a show out of it, but I wanted you to at least see some of it. But I'm going to share some of the things from the martyrs. This is Abraham Lincoln's doorknob. This is the key to box number 7. I have a piece of his clothing and a lot of other stuff that I'm going to show. Also, because we're just outside of Utah, I have some things from the martyr Joseph Smith, which I think is the only person in American history to be martyred for their faith, except I believe Charlie Kirk was martyred for his faith and what he believed, because if you really go back and listen to him, he's always talking about Christ. He's always bringing it back. His testimony is all about Christ. And we don't kill people politically, but that's happened. We really don't kill people for their faith here in America, but I think that's actually what happened with Charlie. So with George Washington looking on and all of the history in my library, we're going to go out front and start greeting a few people. And then after the lesson, because this is Sunday night at 6 p.m. is when we raise our flag back to full staff, and I've invited them to come out, and we're gonna walk to the front gate. We'll raise the flag. We have a teenager that's going to play taps for Charlie just before we raise it, and I've asked another member of the youth group to say a prayer for Charlie, his family, and the shooter's family as well, and our country. So I hope you enjoy it. These things that we fight for, these things that we appreciate, nobody else on earth has. The right to free speech, the right for freedom of religion. Those things are not understood like they are here in America. People are being arrested in England right now. We would always think that they were just as free as we are. They're being arrested because they'll say something the government disagrees with, and they're being put in prison for speech or for putting things online. And not threats, but things that the government disagrees with. We have certain things that are true, but it started a long, long time ago. And here in America, it started with the Pilgrims. When you see these things, I want you to remember, and if you ever see something or you see a hero of yours, I want you to find a picture or something of them so you can always have it with you or near you. Because I had a good friend, the reason why we built this house, we started saving these things. is because the prompting of clay pots, what happened with how did the Bible become the Bible? Does anybody know? Anybody know how the Bible, it didn't just pop out as the Bible. It was a bunch of scriptures. It was a bunch of scrolls. And then a group of people came together under Constantine, and he was going to build an army. And so he was going to gather all of the Christians together, but they disagreed on so much. So somebody had to come together in the Council of Nicaea and put all these books and pick which ones stayed in the Bible, which one didn't go into the Bible. And that's how it all became one book, okay? This is a book, this is the Apocrypha Bible. This is from the 1400s. And this Bible is some of the books that were not included into the Bible, okay? And that is important to understand, that there are other writings that are not in the official Bible. That does not make the Bible more or less true, or doesn't make these true. It just is an understanding that man put that collection together. And then what happened? Once they put that together, then some decided to put it into Latin. And if you see through the fireplace, right underneath the picture of George Washington, there's a desk there from about the time of this, and that was a desk. It was from Spain, where the monks would write and make out all of the scriptures. And what they did is they started putting the scriptures in Latin. Why would you put it in Latin? Why would you pick one language that was a dead language that nobody spoke? Why would you do that? Anyone? Exclusivity? What does that mean? Yes?
Because they only wanted the priest to read it.
They only wanted the priest to read it, okay? That gave them power. Power, you would have to go, if you said, I want to do things, I think God is telling me to do this. I have a painting from my grandmother in the cabin. My great-grandmother, she painted only one painting, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and I have it, and it's one. It's because a priest came to her house. She was very Catholic, and a priest came to her house, and she was very proud of that painting and showed him, and he said, oh no, women should not paint. And she never painted again. There's authority, especially back in the old days with the Latin. You couldn't read the Bible, so you wouldn't know what the Lord was telling you. You didn't have a personal relationship. But what happened was somebody thought that was wrong. And his name was William Tyndale. Anybody know who William Tyndale is? Anyone? Yeah. Who was he?
I just heard the name.
Okay. Anybody else? Tom? Yeah.
Someone who translated the Bible into the English language.
That's how you know him. Yeah. So this was in the British Museum 200 years before we were a country. Okay. The binding was done by the British Museum. And this is an original William Tyndale Bible. Let me tell you the story of who this man was and the importance of this Bible. Every page of this Bible was printed by a different printer because it was illegal to print it in English, anything other than Latin. It was illegal. So William Tyndale believed you should be able to read the scriptures yourself. You should be able to know what God is speaking to you. You should have a personal relationship with the Lord. And you should be able to have his scriptures, his word in your house to be able to read it at any time you wanted. The king didn't want that because the king was in bed with the church and they had a nice thing going on, and that way the king could have power over people. So William Tyndale, he was led by God, and he felt, I have to have this translated into English. So he went over to the continent of Europe, and he asked printers, would you print a Bible? Well, none of them would print a whole Bible, but some of them decided they would print one page. And then they made him agree, I'll print 100 copies of that page, and then I never see or hear from you again, because it was a death sentence to the printer who did it as well. So every page of a Tyndale Bible is printed by a different printer. And then it was assembled after it was smuggled in. If you were caught with one page of the Bible, you were burned at the stake. Imagine a whole Bible. So he would smuggle them in on ships in bags of flour or rice or anything that he could get, so the authorities wouldn't notice that there's scripture pages. And if you were caught with that bag of rice, you were burned at the stake. But this Bible in particular, this one, if you look, the pictures in it show pictures of Christ, and you'll see the face is being blotted out. See that? Any idea why someone might blot the face of Christ out of a Bible? Have you ever heard the word Puritans? Puritans were like our pilgrims. They were sometimes referred to as Puritans. Puritans were people, oh, you're so pure. Oh, you're just so much better than everyone else. It was a derogatory term for people who were very, very devout. But Puritans believed that all of the Ten Commandments were literal. Do not make any graven image of the Lord. So this Bible was owned at one point by a Puritan family because they blotted out the face of the Lord because that was a violation of the Ten Commandments, of making a graven image. So Tyndale, he started to print these Bibles and started to put these Bibles together, and the king caught him. And when the king caught him, he tied him to a stake and put sticks and wood all around him and asked him for any final words. And his last words were, "My only crime is that I believe that you should be able to read the word of God in your own tongue and in your own homes. May God change the heart of the king." And they set him on fire, and then he burned to death. When I think about what people went through to give us the Bible that we can read, and then I think about what I use my phone for, and what I use my iPad for, and how rarely it's to look up scriptures and compared to everything else. Shame on all of us. People died so we could read this. This was, if you had 6 feet of books, that was a king's library at the time. You didn't have books, nobody had books. Now we have access to any book and the Bible in any language on our phone. We should be using the scriptures to guide us on everything because people died for it. If you could go back in time and stop the Holocaust, would you? If you could rescue even one person from the worst human atrocities in history, you would, wouldn't you? Now think about this. Every single day in America, around 3,000 babies are aborted. Someday history is going to look back on this as a genocide of our children because right now, 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in abortion. It's unbelievable what we do. But unlike the past, this is something you can actually do something about. Preborn network clinics, they are on the front lines, meeting women in their darkest hour. They're loving them. They're helping them choose life. And this year alone, over 38,000 babies have been rescued. And that's because of the ultrasound, that simple moment when a mom sees her baby. That's a game changer. It literally doubles the baby's chance at life. So let me ask you again, if you could, would you? You can right now. $28 provides a life-saving ultrasound. Go to preborn.com/Glenn, preborn.com/Glenn, or dial pound 250. I tell you, it's really hard to describe the look on faces of kids when they're locked in and fully engaged, and usually that doesn't happen with history. But this wasn't the usual history lesson that is given to our children in public schools. They're used to hearing about crap like the 1619 Project and how first Americans were a bunch of racist monsters. But I told the stories. I showed them then the documents that proved how free speech and religion were the foundational building blocks of this fledgling experiment in human liberty and freedom. And something remarkable was happening that night. Fundamental rights granted, directed from God.
guided the pilgrims to this land. They were willing to risk their own lives just for a chance of seeing it realized. And this is also what drove the founders to build something called the United States of America.
This is a first draft in Thomas Jefferson's hand of the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson wasn't even supposed to be in Congress on this day when they voted. And they picked 5 people to write. Thomas Jefferson was one of them because John Adams was the head of that council, and nobody liked John Adams because he would argue with anybody about anything, and he didn't make a lot of friends, but he was really a good guy. And he said, I can't write this thing. If I write this, everybody will vote against it just because I wrote it. Who can we get? And Ben Franklin said, you know, that kid over there, he just turned 30, with red hair, I hear he's a good writer. He wasn't supposed to even be there. His wife was dying at home. So Ben Franklin and John Adams went and they asked Thomas Jefferson if he would write the Declaration of Independence. So he goes in a room, in a hotel room, all by himself, and he writes this. And you can see, if you've ever used a Word document and you make a change and you're sharing it with people, you make a change and it will line out, it will put the new line what you wrote, it will line out what was written before, and then it'll come out with a line to the side and it'll put the date and who changed it, okay? This is an early American Word doc because off to the side you will see B. Franklin, J. Adams. You'll see who made the change and what they changed. This was Thomas Jefferson's draft. This is an 1826 engraving done by his son on that. Now, there's a few things that are different in this one, and this is going to help you for the rest of your life if you ever are asked about our founders, because they were all slave owners. And I didn't understand this till I was 40 because I had never seen this document and nobody had ever taught me this document. The question on Thomas Jefferson is, how can you listen to a man who says all men are created equal when he owned slaves? How is that possible? And I never had an answer. Does anybody have an answer for that? How do you listen to a man who says one thing but does the exact opposite? He owns slaves himself and yet he says all men are created equal. The only answer you can come up with is, well, he didn't define them as men. That's not a good answer, okay? But that's the only answer academia will give you because they ignore this document. The Declaration of Independence is the greatest breakup letter of all time, okay? It is like, and you will know someday, when you break up with somebody, most likely one of you will say, it's not you, it's me. This one says, nah, it's really you. But it's kind of us too, because at the very beginning of the document, this is the only revolutionary document where the guys who started the revolution gained power. Every other revolution in the history of the world does not end with the people who started it. Okay? It ends in some place, usually very, very dark. Because most times when you see people who are calling for revolution or calling for the changes in our own country today, they will start with, because we're a bad nation, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this, and we did this, and we can't be a part of that anymore. This document is different, because it almost starts with an apology to the world. It says, when in the course of human events, I'm going to badly paraphrase, people need to break up with each other. Common decency, and the laws of nature and heaven and God require us to say, why? Why are we breaking up? Why are we making this move? It's only right to do so. He says to the king in the opening paragraph. Now remember, this is written for the king. This is not written for some document just to go out. This was written as a letter to the king and to his court. So he says to the king, we are compelled to tell you why. We've been trying to tell you for a long time, but you won't listen to us. We are different here. We're different. What you believe, we no longer believe. Second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident, saying we think something entirely different than you. What you believe is you're the king, and God made you the king. And so we're the subjects, and we'll always be your subjects, and there's nothing we can do. We don't agree with your laws, there's nothing we can do because you're the king. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women, but all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. What does unalienable mean? Inalienable, unalienable, they're interchangeable. What does it mean? Anyone? You can guess.
Unchangeable.
Unchangeable. Meaning no one can change that right. I can't change that right. You as the king can't change that right because it came from God. So no one can take away my right to live, my right for you. You cannot come to my house in the middle of the night. I don't care if you're the king or whoever. You cannot come to my house, take my stuff. You cannot take me and throw me into a dungeon. I have a right. I have a right to know why I'm being thrown into jail. I have a right to face my accuser. I have a right to a fair trial. Those are my rights, and no one can take those away. He says among these rights are life, liberty, you can't put us in jail because you want to. Life, you can't just kill us. And the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness is a phrase that was interchangeable at the time with property. The pursuit of happiness means I can work, I can do what I want, and then I can buy property. You couldn't buy property from the king. The king had to grant you property and made you a lord or a lady or something else. You didn't just go out and say, I want to buy that house. The king would grant you that. And then you could get people to work that land, okay? But they didn't get to keep their profit. Why was it that all of a sudden we go from candles and firelight that had been that way for thousands of years? Within 100 years, we have the electric light bulb. Within 200 years, we're standing on the face of the moon. Why did that happen? After thousands of years of mankind, what changed to give us that ability to all of a sudden go stand on the moon in 200 years in the same country that wrote this? What changed? Free. We were free, which allowed us to do what? Progress. There are 4 books. Who can tell me what capitalism is? Come on, I know you know. It's the system we live under. Capitalism. Capitalism, we believe, is the system that we live under today. I would argue we do not live under capitalism. We live under a very skewed version of capitalism that is controlled by big players and corporations and also our government. They make special deals. The free market is, I can trade with you and you can trade with me and we can do any deal we want. You're making something and I want that something. I can trade you for something I'm making over here that you want, or I can give you money. That's a free market, free trade among people, okay? This idea comes from this set of books. These are from the 1700s. This is Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Adam Smith was a deep-thinking philosopher, and he wrote about economics. And he said nations become very, very wealthy because they can trade amongst themselves, and people can trade amongst themselves, and that will change everything. But what people forget is he wrote another book. And without this book, capitalism does not work. And you read what this one is? Is it upside down? Oh, it's upside down.
Smith on moral sentiments.
Adam Smith on moral sentiments. Moral sentiments, he said that there is the market. And if you want something, and you want something, and you want something, you want something, you want something, you want something, it's all pretty much the same. All of a sudden there's a market for whatever it is you guys want. And if I'm smart, I say, wait, they want this. Let's go make a bunch of those things and sell it to them, okay? But that's called the invisible hand of the market. whatever it is you guys want, by you wanting it and talking about it, somebody will hear you and go, I'm making that for them because I can sell that to them. That's this invisible hand that makes the stuff, okay? And then I come to you and I sell it to you. You're happy and I'm happy. He said, that's the free market. However, there's a problem. Moral sentiments. If what you guys want is really bad and evil, a free market will find the invisible hand, will find people who are more evil than you and go like, I'll make that for you. And so you have to be very careful. You have to be people rooted in God and rooted in good, rooted in charity, rooted in helping one another. Otherwise, that invisible hand of the market will come and choke you all to death. Because if you want porn, it will give you all the porn you could possibly ever want. If you want drugs, it will give you all the drugs, and there's nothing anyone can do because it's an invisible hand and it just serves. So be careful what you want. Be careful to watch your sentiments, what you feel, what you want. Because if we as a collective, if we don't want something good and decent and moral and uplifting, the market will give us what we deserve. We forget those things. So we're wanting to be free so we can own our own land, life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. And then this document says, and governments are instituted among men. Anybody tell me what that means? That governments are instituted among men. Yes.
Does that mean that we can pick our own government?
Yes.
Free election.
That we have free elections. That men, we don't have a king. We decide. So governments are instituted among men. You guys can all vote who the president is. You can vote what kind of government you want. But this document says, this government that we're building will respect the rights of all men. And that government is going to be established by men. And if that government, its only job is to protect and defend those rights. That's the main job of government in America. Not to set prices, not to arrest people, nothing. To protect the rights that were given by God to you. That's their main job. And this document in the third paragraph also says, and to defend those rights, governments are instituted among men. And should that government ever become hostile to those rights, it is the right and the duty of the citizens to overthrow that government, but it does not, there's no period there, and replace it with a government more likely to protect those rights. So you can't just overthrow this government, replace it with a communist government. It's against the Constitution, it's against the Declaration of Independence. We are here because we have rights, and you can overthrow that government if the government ever becomes hostile to those rights. But the only thing you can replace it with is something more likely to protect all of those rights.
There are a ton of cell phone companies out there and new ones popping up all the time. But you want a company that actually stands for something, don't you? Believes in faith, family, freedom, all the things that you believe in. That's why you need to know Patriot Mobile. They're leading the way in the parallel economy, supporting pro-life causes, veterans, first responders, freedom-loving Americans who refused to fund lefty corporations. And they don't just win on values, they also win on the tech side. Patriot Mobile is one of the only carriers with access to all three major carrier networks, which means you get the exceptional coverage that you're used to, plus the ability to have multiple numbers on different networks. I have it all on a single phone. They offer unlimited data, mobile hotspots, international roaming, backup internet, the whole package. And switching is really easy. You can activate right from home or keep your phone or upgrade. Keep your same number or change it. Patriot Mobile makes it simple to stand for something without sacrificing a single bar of service. PatriotMobile.com/Beck, 972-PATRIOT, promo code Beck, get a free month.
We are at a time now where our country comes together. It's 1787, and we win the war, and now we have to put this country together. And all these people that were pulling together in the Declaration of Independence now have to figure out how to put the whole thing together. And they all disagree with each other. And they meet for the Constitutional Convention, and nobody agrees on anything. And they can't agree on anything, on how to put anything together. And so finally, George Washington stands up and says, this is unworkable. We have to come to compromise. We have to come together on this. We've just fought a war. Are we going to fight another war because you guys are squabbling and you can't come together? And Ben Franklin stood up, who your history teachers will tell you is an atheist. He's not. He stood up and he said, I have a suggestion. You know what we haven't done? We haven't prayed enough. May I suggest we break for 3 days and have 3 days of church, all of us together. They didn't agree on church. They didn't go to the same churches. They couldn't. The first act of Congress was to pray. They couldn't pick a pastor to pray because they said, I can't pray with him. I can't pray with him. Well, he's of that religion. I'm of this religion. He can't lead us in prayer. They argued again until one guy stood up who was the most different than everybody else. And he went for the person who was the most different from him. And he said, I nominate him to pray. And we're the furthest apart from each other. But I nominate him to pray because as long as he believes in Jesus and God, I'm with him. That's how our first prayer happened. But the founders broke for 3 days and they went to church for 3 days. Then they came back, they prayed, and they put the Constitution together. And they said it was miraculous because all of a sudden the Spirit of the Lord was there and it practically wrote itself. Because we have these things, we have this. The Book of Mormon. This is, I have the real one in a safe. This is a facsimile of a real one. First edition. It is, there's no, yeah, that's another one like it. This is, there's no punctuation in it. There's no verses. There's nothing. It just is somebody would dictate it to you. It's just a long run-on sentences. Later it came down and they broke it up into verses. But why was this found here? Yes?
We were all under control of the king. And with the king, like we were saying earlier, if we were to say, okay, this is the Book of Mormon they're going to make here, he would own that, switch it over, and then
Exactly right. You didn't have freedom of religion. You didn't have freedom of speech. You didn't have that. You couldn't be different. And I want you to listen really carefully because that's why somebody was martyred last week in our country. I've never seen it in my lifetime. No adult here has seen this in their lifetime where somebody is martyred. I saw it in my lifetime, but I was too young. Maybe some remember Martin Luther King. We do not kill each other on the streets. We don't do that. That's third-rate countries. Those are gang-run countries, drug-infested countries, not the United States of America. And this man last week was gunned down because of what he believed. And what did he believe? You have a right to say something to me, and I have a right to respond to you, and we have a right for free speech and a free exchange of ideas with the people who disagree the most with each other. But we don't kill each other. Americans say, I may vehemently disagree with you, but I will fight to the death for your right to say those things. And you have a responsibility to fight for the right for me to say these things. We don't have to agree on everything. We have to agree that all men are created equal and have a right to free speech and freedom of property and life and religion. Joseph Smith is killed. for the same kinds of reasons. Joseph Smith, you didn't carry necessarily all your scriptures because they were big, heavy books. So you didn't necessarily carry your scriptures with you all the time. But it wasn't uncommon at the time to carry one of these. This is a thumb Bible. And this just has very short synopsis of the books of the Bible. Okay? And you'd keep it in your vest pocket. And so when you were waiting for something or you were doing something, instead of scrolling a phone, which you didn't have, you would take this out and he would read this. So he spent a lot of time reading this. You might be able to read, he put his name in the front of the thumb Bible. You read that? See what it says? This is Joseph Smith's thumb Bible. He always had his scriptures on him. Even if it was just a synopsis, he was always thinking about God and the scriptures. He was martyred. There are several people that were martyred as well. Abraham Lincoln said he wasn't a Christian when he first entered office. His father was such a bad guy. His father, when he was growing up in the middle of the woods in Illinois, with nobody around, his father would beat him. He'd get drunk and he'd beat him. But as he would beat him, he'd be quoting the scriptures. And he'd be beating the scriptures into him. And Abraham Lincoln thought, this is the opposite. If this is what a Christian is, then I am not a Christian. He learned his scriptures from literal beatings. His mom dies. He's 8 years old. And his mom dies. And his dad, who is a raging alcoholic and really bad guy, just leaves. Abraham Lincoln is there with his young sister. Dad doesn't come home. Mom is dead. He's now in the middle of the woods. He has to keep his sister alive. He doesn't know if he'll ever see anybody ever again. He's got to forage into the woods. He's got to hunt. He's got to keep his sister alive and him alive. A year later, his dad returns home, opens up the door. A woman pulls a woman in behind him, and he looks at Abraham Lincoln and said, "That's your mom." That's how he was introduced to his stepmother. That's your new mom. Abraham Lincoln later said, everything that I am, I owe to my mother. He meant that woman. Because that woman cared for him and loved him and saw him for what he really was and taught him how to read. It was against the law to teach slaves how to read. It was a death sentence. You teach a slave how to read, you and your family will be put to death by the government. Why? Why? Because if you can read, you can think. And if you can think, you can do, and you can change the world. His father said, you don't need to read. He doesn't need to read. Stop it. And he beat Abraham Lincoln, and she would still teach him how to read. He read. When he left, he grew up, he left home, hating his father, loving his stepmother. He was not a Christian. He still didn't have any testimony. He turned out to be a really bad kid, did some really bad things. Never killed anybody, but was not living, let's say, the covenant path by any stretch of the imagination. And the pastor saw him, saw how much talent was in him, saw how smart he was, and saw that he wanted to be a lawyer. And he's like, you know what? Why don't you come and preach a couple of sermons? Because Abraham Lincoln knew the scriptures. And so Abraham Lincoln would give a couple of sermons, and he'd give these sermons, and he'd give them as a lawyer, and he'd be making the case for God. Okay, but he still said he wasn't a Christian. We have a letter from that pastor who said he's more of a Christian than anybody I ever met at that time. He gets into office, he still says he's not a Christian. Now they're trying to kill him when he gets into office because the South wants slavery. So they're trying to kill him. They try to kill him the first day before he even is president, before he's sworn in. They're trying to kill him on the way to Washington to be sworn in as the president. He fights the war. He's not a Christian until he says Gettysburg. Gettysburg happens. It is slaughter beyond your wildest imagination. Thousands of men die on the battlefield. We think of battle now as you go, you fight, you die, and then somebody picks up the battlefield and everybody's buried and you move on. It wasn't like that. This was fought during the summer, and in November is when Abraham Lincoln makes it finally to Gettysburg. And the bodies are still so thick, they are stacked like cordwood, 6 feet high. Imagine the smell of Gettysburg. And he writes a few words on the train. This is a plaque of those words. We have the actual Gettysburg Address in another vault. There are only 4 copies of it. Because the one copy, the original copy, he gave to a reporter from New York who came up to him and said, "That was a mighty fine speech, sir." And he said, "Do you have a copy of it?" And he said, "Sure," and he gave him the original copy. And then he took the original copy, he typed it out, and then threw the original away. So during the war, to raise money for the sick and the grieving widows and families, he wrote 4 copies. The White House has a copy. I just told the story to President Trump up at the Lincoln bedroom. He thought it was the only copy, and I said, "Which one do you have?" And he said, "What do you mean?" "There's 2 copies that say, under God, this nation under God shall not perish from this earth." 2 copies that don't say under God. We have no idea why. The White House has the copy, and we have the copy that say under God. But what he said, this is the Gettysburg Address, and what he said was that we're now testing whether a nation like this, that was conceived under the ideas of all men are created equal, can endure. We don't know if it can endure. He said, "We come to a war, and now I'm here to dedicate a portion of this field as a final resting place for those who are here that gave their lives that this nation might live." And he said, it's altogether fitting and it's appropriate we do this. But he said, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate. We can't consecrate. We can't hallow this ground. The brave men who died here, who struggled here, they consecrated far more than we could ever do. The world will little note, listen to this, the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it will never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work that they have fought here and so far nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave their last full measure and devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. He is saying they did all the work. Now it is our job to finish that work. I want to bring you back to William Tyndale, to all of the prophets, to Joseph Smith, and dare I put him in this category this week, Charlie Kirk, who died because he believed in something. And nothing we can say about Charlie Kirk or any prophet of the past, Abraham Lincoln, anything we say about them means nothing. Nobody's going to remember what we say about them. But it's what we choose to do now that will make all of the difference.
When Moxy Pest Control started 25 years ago, their goal was to raise a standard in the industry known for being kind of hit or miss. Moxy is not just a pest control company. They're trained problem solvers, pest control experts who believe that small gestures matter, like closing the gates behind them, wearing shoe coverings in your home, leaving a thoughtful note on exactly what was done and what to expect next. Here's an idea, a company that shows up on time. They do the job right the first time. They stand behind their work because they believe that peace of mind is not a luxury. Every Moxy technician trains daily on leading edge techniques, daily. It's not just for show, it's to make sure you get the very best possible results every single time. So whatever you're dealing with, whatever the pests are in your house, this is personalized for your house. I want you to go to moxyservices.com. Right now, moxyservices.com/Beck. Use the promo code Beck, get your first service for $25. I think it's October 9th. I'm going to be filling in for Charlie Kirk at one of his campus stops. This one's in North Dakota, and I'm not sure what I'm going to teach yet. But I hope it goes. I hope it goes well. I hope to answer a lot of the questions that these kids must be having while they're in college. But the show that you're watching now, I invited these families out to my home, was also the week that we lost Charlie Kirk. It was just a few days later. And one of the first things I did was lower my flags to half-mast. But this day was Sunday. The flags across the country were supposed to go back up to full. And as we all began the process of moving on and surrounded by the next generation of our leaders of our country in the decades to come, I asked somebody under 20 to play the piano, to play the bugle, and to raise the flag. And we raised that flag back to full for my dear friend, Charlie Kirk.